YouTube, it's Chris. Welcome back to the channel. This video is about custom resolutions and how to make them. Now, originally this guide was supposed to be for custom resolution utility, but NVIDIA on some of their latest drivers have now allowed the option to create a custom resolution if you have a monitor with display stream compression. In the past, on the older drivers, you weren't able to create a custom resolution through the NVIDIA control panel or use a bunch of features if you had a monitor with display stream compression. Now, a lot of those monitors are typically high refresh rate monitors. So as an example, that would be like 1440p at 360 Hz, 1440p at 500 Hz, 4K at 240, 1080p at 500 Hz or 540 Hz. So that was kind of annoying. I'm also a little bit annoyed that NVIDIA finally added the feature just as I decided to make this video. But if you want to make a resolution that's actually display scaled, you will still have to use custom resolution utility. So I would just cover both aspects of making a GPU scaled resolution and a display scaled resolution in this video. Now, there's a couple reasons why you might want to run a lower resolution. One of them might be you just don't have the greatest graphics card and you want to get lower GPU usage and more frame rate. Another option could be you really like a sort of stretch resolution, and running stretch resolution in a lot of games can give you a slight advantage, even though X and Y with your mouse will feel a little bit faster than sort of up and down. So this will feel a little bit faster than sort of up and down. You can get sort of a stretched model. So, you know, most monitors nowadays are on 16:9. As an example, this is like Counter-Strike Go. That's sort of the model there. On 16:10, you can see the model a little bit more stretched, and 4:3, you can see the model even more stretched, and then 5:4, you can see the model even more stretched. So there can be an advantage. It's really more of a preference on why you would want to run stretch resolution, or even just a custom resolution or a lower resolution. So it sort of depends on your needs. You either want like lower GPU usage or more frames, or maybe you want to make the game stretched for more of a competitive advantage in a shooter. So for the purposes of this video, I will just cover like stretched sort of resolutions because it all sort of applies. You guys can choose whatever resolution you want to create or make. That's fine. But I just sort of want to cover stretched resolutions just as just something to do, I guess, just something to cover, right? So there's a cool website that's kind of useful if you don't want to use a calculator, and we can work out sort of stretch resolutions. Now, my recommended stretch resolutions would be keeping your horizontal pixels. So keeping your vertical pixels. So vertical being up and down, I would recommend just keeping those because it's going to make the image more clear, because you want to keep as many pixels as you can when stretched, especially if you have a good enough card. So that way you're only changing the resolution from left to right, so you can get sort of a clearer image. You will see some of the Counter-Strike guys run really, really low resolutions and really, really low stretch resolutions. I reckon that's silly with modern day hardware, especially if you have a medium to sort of high-end graphics card. There's no point. So these are sort of the resolutions that I would recommend running, whereas you're keeping the vertical pixels. So if you've got a 1920 by 1080p display, 16:10 would be 1728, 4:3 will be 1440, and see how we're keeping the vertical pixels here, and it will make the image a lot more clearer, which is nice. And if you have a 1440p display, it'd be 2304 for 16:10 and 1920 by 1440 by 43. And if you have a 4K display, this is what it sort of looks like. 4K is 3840 by 2160. If you want 16:10, that'll be 3456 by 2160 or 2880 by 2160. So yeah, I mean, it can be kind of sort of useful. So there is a cool like website aspect ratio calculator that you can use to sort of confirm that. So I mean, we're going to be mainly working on my 1440p display today. So as an example, so 2304. We type that in here, 2304. As you can see, that is 16:10, and then 1920 by 1440 would be 4:3. So 1920 by 1440 be 4:3. Just wanted to show you guys this one way you can sort of work it out, make life a little bit easier. Now, my monitor here is a display stream compression monitor, right? So if I was to turn off display stream compression on the monitor itself, it would limit me down to 240 Hz. And in the past, I was unable to make custom resolutions through the NVIDIA control panel. It just simply wouldn't let me do this. On the latest drivers, they're allowing you to do this now, which is sort of great. I mean, that should have been done ages ago because AMD have been able to do this for ages on display stream compression. And it looks like they have brought back the feature, or allowed us to use the feature of integer scaling on these drivers, which is great. And GSR factors we did have access to before if your monitor had display stream compression. So I will cover GPU scaling, making a custom resolution first, which will be through the NVIDIA control panel, and then later we will cover custom resolution utility. So first I'll cover integer scaling if you guys are interested. So integer scaling is pretty interesting, right? It can make older games that aren't made in the highest resolution look a lot clearer. So here are some image examples, but it can also be useful if you want to run a lower resolution than the image to look a little clearer. And now that NVIDIA have added this feature for monitors with display stream compression, this is great. I mean, you guys would have had access to this if you had a monitor without display stream compression. So I'll show you guys what sort of that looks like. Now the different resolutions, basically I'll explain this, both width and height scale exactly by 2. So as an example, I've got a 1440p display, so a 1280 by 720 integer scales perfectly into 2560 by 1440. So it kind of does a resolution by blocks. So that means that each source pixel becomes a 2x2 block of pixels on the 1440p screen, no blur, no stretching. So this can be kind of a cool way of sort of running a lower resolution, looking a little bit clearer. It's definitely worth trying out if you guys are interested. So if you're on 1080p, you would have to have a resolution of 960 by 540. If you're on 1440p, you would have to run a resolution of 1280 by 720. And if you're on 3840 by 2160, which is 4K, you need to run a resolution of 1920 by 1080. And you would also have to have the integer scaling on. So I'll try turning that on now. That's turned on, and notice how it's actually put us in GPU scaling. So that's just a normal feature. So instead of doing display scaling, it will do GPU scaling. I'll talk to you guys about that a little bit later. I've done some input lag tests, especially on recent graphics cards, and it looks quite interesting, the input lag tests, as far as display scaling versus GPU scaling. So obviously this isn't everything. We're still running native 1440p. So we would need to change our resolution to, you know, as you can see here, we would need to change it. Because I'm on a 1440p display, I need to change it to 1280 by 720, and it should make everything sort of full screen, with sort of doubling the pixels, I guess, like 2x2, kind of the way I wrote that there. So let's see if this works. Press yes. I'll make sure OBS is hooked into the screen, and it looks like it has. Cool. So as you can see here, this would be a lot clearer than running 1280 by 720p stretched. It is not perfect, but it definitely looks like a lot clearer, and it is simply sort of just like doing a 2x2 block sort of a thing. So this might be worth trying out if you guys are interested and you don't mind the game looking a little bit worse, but clearer than just running a stupidly low resolution. So I'd imagine like a really, really GPU heavy game, if you don't have the greatest card, this could be a great option. And it's great that NVIDIA finally added this this feature to display stream compression monitors, finally. So might be worth checking out. Give it a go, see what you think. And yeah, if you're on like say 1080p and you don't have this resolution, you will have to create it to run it. So integer scaling would like sort of automatically work, if that makes sense. Most of you on these displays would have these resolutions already by default, so you'll be fine. But yeah, if you're on 1080p, you'll probably have to actually make this resolution so you can set it to it while you have integer scaling on. So it actually does the 2x2 pixel thing. All right, what about making a custom resolution with the NVIDIA control panel? So that's pretty straightforward. We will make these resolutions here. All right. So in the NVIDIA control mode, you go to NVIDIA control panel. And so in the past, before, if you had a display stream compression monitor, you're unable to do this on these latest drivers. At least the latest driver that I am on, it's allowing me to do this. So you would simply go customize. So say I wanted to run, we already have like 1920 by 1440 here. So that's cool. So I wouldn't really need to make that one. That's going to be 4x3. So there we go there. And as you guys might not see this in OBS, but basically we have black bars. So to fix the black bars, we would actually have to put this on full screen. And we have black bars because we are actually in GPU scaling. So I'll show you guys that if you go to settings, system, display, and advanced display, as you can see here, desktop mode and active signal mode need to be the same numbers if it's display scaling. If they are not the same numbers, this is GPU scaling. So we're actually GPU scaling because our desktop mode is 1920 by 1080 and active signal mode is 2560 by 1440. Don't be confused by desktop mode. This would be the same if we went into a game and just switched to this resolution. This would still be GPU scaled. So NVIDIA control panel is kind of like lying here. It's actually not display scaling. It's actually GPU scaling. So I want you guys sort of to be aware of that. That's sort of what you need to look out for. If you're not sure if you're GPU scaled or display scaled, these two numbers need to be matched up. So because You know, where a GPU scaled, we would need the GPU to scale the resolution to full screen, so we're actually stretched. So we would actually need to put this to full screen. Okay, I'll put that to full screen, and now we are stretched. I'll make sure OBS sees it, and OBS does. Great. And that's how you would do that. And yeah, like literally it wouldn't matter what you have this set to at this point. Like it's not going to make a difference because it already is GPU scaled. Hopefully that clears some things up. Now we want to make a 16 by 10 resolution because currently this is 4 by 3 and that was sort of already there. We actually want to create a custom one because 16 by 10 is going to be 2304 by 1440. So not as stretched as 4 by 3, but a little bit like it's a little bit more stretched than 16 by 9. Quite a nice resolution. We don't have that option available to us here. So we're going to create it. So we'll basically go customize, enable resolutions not exposed by this display, create custom resolution, and we would simply just change it here. You don't really need to worry about too much else in here. Just need to change this here. So 2304 by 1440 at 500 hertz or whatever your native refresh rate is. Click test, and we'll test that. And then it's applied, and then you have to click yes, and then the screen will flicker a couple of times. It's kind of annoying, and then press OK, and it won't actually set that resolution. Make sure OBS is still working. We'll actually need to set it, so we'll click on that, press apply, and then there. And we're already stretched because we set it to full screen here. And like I said, it doesn't matter what we set here. It's going to be GPU scaled. Any resolution that you create with the NVIDIA control panel will be GPU scaled, as you can see here. Active signal mode is 2560 by 1440 and desktop mode is 2304 by 1440. These numbers do not match up, so we are GPU scaled. Even if I go in here and set it to display, it's still going to be GPU scaled. So I'll press yes on that. You can see here, it is still GPU scaled. These numbers are not the same. Surely I'll show you guys how to make a display scaled resolution instead. But just so you guys know, you don't have to run this resolution on the desktop for most games. You can just run native and then just change to that resolution in game, no problem. It's totally personal preference. I don't know why you would want to bother running stretched on the desktop as well. And I'll show you guys maybe Apex Legends a little later, just as an example. Some games are really weird to try to get to work in stretched resolution because the developers try to lock you out. Some games you actually have to make the native resolution, the actual stretch resolution that you're using. And that'll be sort of the same as I will show you sort of display here. Like as an example, with Apex, we may need to make like this recommended as well. So it's sort of same with the NVIDIA control panel. It'll say native in the NVIDIA control panel, and then the display settings, it would say recommended. So some games you actually have to make the custom resolution recommended. Not all games. It's usually some Unreal Engine games, and I think Apex Legends, maybe Valorant. I'm not entirely sure, but some games you do have to make this recommended. We cannot do that with the NVIDIA control panel. We actually have to use custom resolution utility to do that, but I'll cover that a little bit later. Let's say you wanted to remove that resolution. My advice would be go back to your sort of native resolution and go ahead and go customize. Press delete here. Press delete. The screen will go black. You can uncheck enable resolutions not exposed by this display. Press OK, and then sort of you're back to normal. There's no custom resolutions created. I'll teach you guys how to use custom resolution utility. It doesn't matter what scaling we're going to have on here at all when we use custom resolution utility, because it will be always display scaled, and we will actually need to change the scaling on the display on your monitor's OSD panel. So no matter what's set here, it'll always do full screen as long as your monitor's OSD panel, like in your actual monitor settings itself with the buttons, is sort of set to a certain aspect ratio of full screen. So it actually doesn't matter what we're going to have set here if we're going to use custom resolution utility. So grab custom resolution utility, just Google it. I'd recommend clicking on this link here, and then we'll go ahead and, or actually no, I usually like to click on ToastDX. So go on ToastDX, click on CRU, zip, we have to download it, and we'll have to go into our downloads folder, and we'll have to extract it. I'll just extract here. Okay. Now, I would recommend running it as admin if you don't have UAC disabled, just in case. And they've given us a couple of cool tools here. So this is the program to change the resolutions. This is how to completely reset all of it. So if you're not happy and want to just go back to a default state, you can run that. And then if you've made a custom resolution and you don't want to restart the PC, we can actually just use one of these. But these are both the same. One's 64-bit, one's 32-bit. So you just use the 64-bit. I'll just delete this just so you guys don't get too confused. Just make life a little bit easier. Okay. I want to show you guys a cool tip. Another way of pressing reset all is if you go into device manager. So I press Windows key X there, but you can search device manager. I'll go view. I like to go devices by connection, and I like to go show hidden devices. If you find your graphics card, you can see all the monitors that were plugged in or were plugged in. So there might be some hidden ones that you had plugged in before that are currently unplugged. Now, when you create a custom resolution through custom resolution utility, the data gets stored in registry, but can easily be deleted with this. So you could simply, like, instead of doing reset all, another way of doing it is right clicking, uninstall device, and then restart the PC. That's another way of going back to a default state if you've created custom resolutions and you're unhappy with them. Now, I just want to check the resolutions that are by default. I believe 1920 by 1440 was GPU scaled. So let's quickly check that first. Because if that is GPU scaled, we would want to make that in custom resolution utility. So this is a 4:3 resolution that doesn't stretch the vertical pixels, which would be quite nice. So I'll apply that resolution. Then I'll go to Windows settings and I'll just check, go to display, and I'll go to advanced display. And okay, yeah, so it is GPU scaled. So if we wanted a display scale, one would actually have to create a custom one through custom resolution utility. So we will create both of these because native is already display scaled. That's fine. For display scaled custom resos, we'll have to we'll create both of these. So when we use custom resolution utility, it'll always do display scaled resolutions, whereas when you do it with NVIDIA control panel, it'll always be GPU scaled if it's a custom res and not your native res. There are some resolutions on your display that will be display scaled, and we can actually see what they would be through CRU. So let's open CRU. I would recommend running as an administrator. We need to make sure you select your display here, and it needs to say active. There might be a whole bunch of inactive displays. You might have some other displays connected in. You want to make sure you have your actual display here and selected. Okay, you'll see a lot of guides that they'll like delete custom resolutions and all this nonsense. You don't need to do that. That's silly. But you can on some displays remove variable refresh rate support by deleting that. You can remove HDR support. I'm not going to cover that stuff here because 9 times out of 10 on a lot of displays you can end up just with a black screen of death, and you know it's annoying to sort of recover it if you don't get the option to run reset all and you've already restarted. So I'm not going to sort of cover deleting a whole bunch of resolutions here. I just think that's silly. There's no need to do that. So in CRU we've got our monitor selected, okay, and detailed resolutions is the resolution that Windows will see as a native. So see how this says recommended, right? Whatever's on the top here will be recommended. And it's the same with NVIDIA control panel. Whatever's on the top here, whatever says native, that's from this. So say we wanted to make 1920 by 1440 recommended, right? So I'll just go back to display. Say I wanted to make 1920 by 1440 recommended because some games are being a little weird and not letting us run stretched resolution properly. Simply to do that, you would click add, and we would I would recommend just setting like automatic PC, because this is not the resolution we're actually going to be using. It's just a resolution as a backup just to show Windows, hey, this is my native for my monitor. All right. So it doesn't really matter what we set here. We just have to set the actual resolution. So that's, you know, the 4:3 is 1920 by 1440 because we want to make that recommended. We would press OK, but we would need to make this one at the top. Right. You could delete that one. I wouldn't bother. This just needs to be at the top. Whatever's the top here is going to be the recommended resolution. Right. At the moment, it is not recommended. We want to make 1920 by 1440p recommended. So we would actually need to either press OK to apply changes and restart the PC, or we could double click on reset all. So I'll run reset all, and hopefully OBS doesn't have a big, restart 64. You don't want to press reset all because it will wipe everything back to factory. We want to press restart 64. So instead of, we could restart the PC, come back in, and it will be good to go. But to save time, we'll just use Right, I'm back. My OBS crashed after doing all that. I didn't know how else to do this. I didn't really want to record this video with like a camera. So anyway, now we want to make a custom resolution, right? After all that, carry on. Like I said, I don't need to make my resolutions native or recommended for the games I'm playing if I want to run stretched. So let's try making these resolutions. Because remember, we have this resolution available to us, but it is GPU scaled, and we want to make it display scaled. Another advantage of display scaling is the image will be a lot clearer. So text will look a lot clearer than GPU scaling, that's for sure. Now, to do that, we'll go to CRU. We actually don't need to screw with any of this. We actually need to go into the extension blocks, guys. So you need to go display ID and go edit, and then detailed resolutions. Now, it doesn't matter what you have selected here, display ID 1.3 or 2.0, it doesn't matter. These two will clone each other. So just do it in 1.3, but it will also make it in 2.0. So you don't need to worry. So you go display ID, edit, 1.3 is fine. And then you need to click on this and go edit. And here are our custom resolutions at high refresh rate that will be all display scaled. So if I run 1920 by 1080p, I'll already be display scaled. Native display scaled. If I want to run a 2560 by 1440 by 480, it'd be display scaled. At 360, it'd be display scaled. At 240, it'd be display scaled. Most other resolutions will actually be GPU scaled. So I do know that BenQ have a bunch of custom resolutions that a lot of Counter-Strike pros use already built into the EDID. So this is basically the EDID of the monitor, like all the built-in resolutions of the monitor. That's what we're editing here with custom resolution utility, where we're editing the EDID basically. So obviously we want to make some custom resolutions here. We don't have any option for add, right? So what I would do is I would delete some resolutions that we're typically not going to use. So I'm not going to use the 240, so I'll delete that so we can make room. I'm not going to use a 360. I'll delete that so I can make some room. Do not delete your native. I would recommend always leaving your native. So speaking of native, this is my native resolution and the max refresh rate. Click on it, go edit, and go copy. So we'll copy all the timings and everything just to make our life easier. And then you can close out of that. Now let's click add and then go paste. So we've grabbed all the timings and everything just to make our life easier. And all we need to do is simply just change the actual horizontal resolution. So 2304 is going to be 16 by 10. I'll press OK. And there it is there. And then we'll click add. And I'll go paste again. And then 1920 by 1440. And then I'll press OK. And then there we have it. Now we have our custom resolutions made. 16 by 10, 4 by 3. Need to press OK, OK, OK. And now I need to press restart 64 or restart the PC. Okay, that's done, and I just press exit. Now, when we go to the NVIDIA control panel, we should have that resolution available to us. We could also, if you're on AMD, guys, because this works on AMD as well. You know, obviously the NVIDIA stuff I covered before doesn't, but like custom resolution does work. We could also just change it within here by going to advanced display adaptive properties, list all modes, and we could change it here as well. So it doesn't matter sort of which way you want to change it. I guess for the purposes of this video, it would be easier if I just use this because we can quickly see desktop mode and active single mode. As you can see here, we are display scaled on native. Now let's try 2304 by 1440. Now it may show and create other resolutions that are lower refresh rate. Typically these will be GPU scaled, right? Because they weren't created. So we need to actually select the one that we created, which is 2304 by 1440. And that is 16 by 10. Let's change to that resolution. So I'll just press OK and apply. But yeah, you could do this in NVIDIA control panel. That's fine. And as you can see here, 2304 by 1440 and active signal mode 2304 by 1440. And the text is much clearer than GPU scaled at full screen. So I'll just make sure OBS is showing. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't matter. I'm in full screen now. It doesn't matter what I have set in the scaling here. Now, it doesn't matter. I'm full screen. Now, if you are not full screen here, you need to go onto your monitor settings and you need to change the scaling mode so you are in full screen. So you can see the full screen, because it depends on your OSD's monitor settings. Okay. Now let's do the same thing for 1920 by 1440, because remember that resolution was available to us before, but it wasn't actually display scaled, it was GPU scaled. I'll go 1920 by 1440 and apply. Keep changes, and I'll make sure OBS is still working, and it is. And as you can see, now these numbers are the same. 1920 by 1440 at 500 and 1920 by 1440 at 500. And we have custom display scaled resolutions. So yeah, I will now, that's how you do it basically. Now I will show you guys some input lag tests that I did with display scaled versus GPU scaled. And it's looking quite interesting that GPU scaled might be on top now, at least with the modern graphics cards. In the past, when I've tested it before, like on my 3090 and 2080 Ti and 6900 XT, the display scaled was better. But now it seems that maybe GPU scaling might be better. But the problem is with GPU scaling is that it's the text and the image isn't as clear. So I would still recommend just using display scaled, honestly. But I'll show you those input lag tests now. I did some custom latency tests with my custom latency tool with a UE4 black and white test between GPU scaled and display scaled. And I found it sort of quite interesting because, like I said, I've tested this in the past. It was quite difficult to sort of get it to work, especially GPU scale to work. So I did basically 500 runs. This is a UE4 black and white test. I did it between GPU scaled and display scaled, and I made sure one was GPU scaled, one was display scaled. I did at 1920 by 1440. Sorry, I did it. Yeah, I did it at 1920 by 1080 on a 1440p display. One test was GPU scaled, one test was display scaled. Let me find the other test here. If it lets me open two of them. Yeah, so I found the results kind of interesting. So this was actually GPU scaled. Sorry, this was display scaled. 320 was display scaled and 317 was GPU scaled. Now in the past on my older cards, like I said before, 3090, 6900 XT, 2080 Ti, GPU scaled had always been worse. So I don't know if that's a new graphics card thing being on the 5090, or if that's maybe because I'm on OLED or something. I have no idea. Or if this is just close enough that it's just benchmark variation at this point. But it looks like the latency isn't bad on GPU scaling, sort of like what it used to be. Because usually in the past, if you've used GPU scaling, the latency's always been a little bit worse. I would still stick with display scaling anyway, just because the text and the image is going to be a lot clearer anyway. But it's sort of really up to you. If you can't be bothered to use CRU and you're just happy with using the NVIDIA control panel and you don't mind, so it's usually the text in games looks a little bit more blurrier. That's fine. But I just thought I wanted to show you guys that. I didn't want to lie to you guys or anything like that. Like I've always said, display scaling is lower input lag, and it has been. But it looks like maybe on modern hardware, like at least on my 50 series card, it seems like it's pretty close or the same, which is kind of cool to see. So that was GPU scaled. That was display scaled. So GPU scaled kind of wins, which is interesting. Not as clear though. I think I have some other photos here just showing sort of my testing methodology. It was quite difficult for me to get the UE4 black and white test to work and GPU scaling to work, but I got it to work. And I actually had to make a custom launch command for the black and white test and confirm it was actually in that resolution. So we had no benchmark variation through the latency tests. I even used MSI Afterburner overlay just to show me that it was in that resolution between GPU scale and display scale. But yeah, I thought you guys might find that interesting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, because I've cleared everything, I'm going to make my custom resolutions again. Okay, and then I'm also going to install Apex Legends and show you guys, because I recently worked with a client who plays Apex Legends and wanted to get stretch resolution to work, and it was actually rather difficult. And the game seemed to not want to accept 4:3 resolutions, kind of locked out by the developers. It used to be able to when the game was DirectX 11, but it seems now the game is DirectX 12. It's sort of seems almost near impossible to do. But they at least let you use 16:10. So let's confirm that. I'm just gonna make the custom resolutions, paste that. And it's 2304x400. So made both of those. Ready to go. Okay, cool. So I'll go install Apex Legends, see you guys in a sec. All right, so Apex is downloaded. To confirm that we're in the correct resolution in game, whether it be 2304x1440, it's actually stretched properly. or 1920 by 1440. I'm going to use my MSI Afterburner overlay. You guys can grab this too. It's in my GitHub guide, installs MSI Afterburner script. This is sort of what the overlay looks like. And it's pretty handy because it'll tell you a bunch of features and a bunch of things that are sort of fairly important. So I can sort of look at what the actual res is of the game, and I can look at the refresh rate, what DirectX model. It's pretty nice. So I'll leave that open and we'll open up Apex Legends. Okay, I've installed the game, got the game open. As you can see in game, in full screen, we are at independent flip at 2560 by 1440. Ignore the refresh rate. I think that's bugged at the moment. Not reading it correctly. So say we wanted to use a stretch res, we could simply just change that in game. So 16 by 10 would be 2304 by 1440. Let's see if that actually works. It looks like it works, which is nice, but no, it's actually not working. Look, we're at 2560 by 1440. It's actually not in the stretch res. So it's doing some kind of weird scaling thing here. Let's jump into the game and see what the hell's going on. Yeah, I think there's something funky going on where it's actually not stretching properly. It looks kind of stretched, but not clear. I don't really know what's going on, but it's 2560 by 1440. So there's two ways we could do this. We could either make 2304 by 1440 the recommended resolution in Windows, or we could run borderless windowed mode with borderless windowed mode setting in Windows 11. Let's try this first. So I'll go add, it doesn't really matter, I'll just do automatic PC. 2304 by 1440, and then I'll make sure that's on top, and then I'll just go ahead and I'll quit the game and restart all. I'll go do that now. Restart 64. All right, that's done. Let's confirm that that's actually the recommended resolution. It is 2304 by 1440. We'll jump back into the game and see if that works. It looks like that didn't work. You can see here 2304 by 1440. Okay, so that's not going to work with this game. That method does work with some games. What if we try borderless windowed mode? Okay, so we're going to play borderless windowed mode on Apex because it's DirectX 12. This doesn't matter. But if it's DirectX 11 and under, we would definitely want to have optimization for windowed mode games on. This is usually on by default. But that means you're not going to like lose any frames or get any higher latency running games that are DirectX 11 and under in borderless windowed mode. You can't run windowed mode, but it has to be borderless windowed mode. So what if we try that? Just apply. Okay, interesting. Game does some weird stuff. So it works, but it looks like we actually have to change the desktop resolution. So this wasn't the solution. I can remove that. Looks like we're going to have to run the same desktop resolution as well. So let's do that. 2304 by 1440. This game is quite painful. And I do remember, like, when I was working with that client, it was quite difficult to get this to work. And make sure OBS is working. OBS is working. And here we go, 2304 by 1440. So it's actually displaying. So yeah, this game's kind of a pain. So you probably want to run borderless windowed mode for this game. Jump into the test range and see what that looks like. All right, and that is working, but we have to actually have that resolution on the desktop as well. So interesting game. I do remember that I don't think the game accepts 1920 by 1440. So we know that setting the recommended doesn't work. So let's try 4:3. I'll change this on the desktop. 1920 by 1440. Done. Make sure OBS is hooked in. Cool. And let's try changing that in the game. So I'll go set. Oh, games did some weird stuff here. 1920 by 1440. Where's the apply button? I just do window. Oh, okay. If this happens to you guys and you've lost the screen, just press Alt Enter. That usually works. Alt Enter. And you can just drag the window a little bit. Sort of not letting me. Kind of annoying. Not letting me resize it either. Maybe I'll just go back to 16 by 10 for now. It's quite annoying. It's not letting me apply the setting. You can't make this up. Alt Enter, Alt Enter. Sometimes Alt Enter works, literally. Not letting me. I'll try changing the resolution back to native just so we can set this setting first. It's 2560 by 1440. I'll click on the game and press Alt Enter. There we go. Now I've actually got an apply button. We'll go borderless windowed mode at 4:3 and 1920 by 1440. I'll apply that, and it's looks like it's working, but to see how we're in comp flip, that's really bad. Because that's actually weird. That's not proper borderless windowed mode. Yeah, so that's actually, we're in windowed mode. You'd never ever want to play in windowed mode. That flip model is very bad for latency. So let's try changing it on the desktop now and see if that works. Well, what if we try full screen? We know full screen didn't work. And yeah, so full screen doesn't work. We've just got black bars on the top and bottom. So let's change this back to borderless windowed. And it looks like we're gonna have to set the desktop resolution, because DirectX 12 can get weird with a flip model and not run borderless windowed mode correctly, or you have to actually match it with the desktop resolution. So let's match it with the desktop resolution, see if we can get this to work. I don't think I got this to work last time with that client. Just think the developers have locked out 4:3. Okay, so we're in and we are 1920 by 1440, but okay, we've got it working, but the developers on purpose have made black bars on the top and bottom. So it's not going to work with this game. As a last resort, I'm going to try something very desperate. I'm going to Alt F4 the game. I'm going to like try something really desperate here. I'm going to make this as the recommended resolution, 1920 by 1440. I'm going to delete that resolution. I'm even going to go into the extension blocks and delete any other 1440p resolutions. I mean, I wouldn't recommend you guys doing this, but I just want to see if I can get it to work with Apex Legends. All right, and then I'm going to press restart 64. Okay, we're back. Let's see what's going on here. 1920 by 1440 native, 1920 by 1440 recommended. Now let's boot up Apex Legends, see if that works. Okay, game is booted. Desktop resolution is the same. We've deleted the other resolutions, and it looks like we are out of luck. The game developers have just given us black bars on the top and bottom. What if we do a try full screen? And that's not going to work either. So you used to be able to do this with DirectX 11, but sort of like forcing it with custom resolution utility. So game developers have locked it out. So at least 16 by 10 is a viable option, but no 4:3, which kind of sucks. So some game developers will lock you out. It is what it is. Now, I hope you found this video useful, guys, and helpful. And I know it was a little bit in depth and all over the place, but I just sort of want to cover all aspects on how I would try to get something to work. Yeah, happy resolution creating, guys, and we'll catch you later. Bye.